The rain drummed softly against the glass walls of the Montgomery estate, a mansion so massive that it seemed to exist outside the world itself. Inside, everything gleamed, marble floors reflecting the chandelier's glow, gold-rimmed mirrors on every wall, and an endless parade of servants moving quietly like ghosts. This was the home of Charles Montgomery, one of the richest men in the world, a billionaire whose arrogance was as legendary as his wealth. He had built his empire from tech patents and ruthless business deals, and he carried himself like a man untouchable by fate. Every morning, he sat in his private dining hall, reading financial reports while sipping coffee flown in from a single farm in Colombia, roasted precisely to his taste. The household knew one rule: never speak to Mr. Montgomery unless spoken to first. Even the senior staff treated him with a mixture of awe and fear. But there was one presence in the house who barely registered in his mind. Elena, the quiet maid who had worked there for nearly 5 years. She was invisible to him, a shadow cleaning his floors, washing his crystal glasses, polishing the grand piano no one ever played. Her clothes were always plain, her voice soft, and her eyes tired from long shifts that started before sunrise and ended long after midnight. She was a widow, barely surviving, raising her teenage son Liam, who sometimes accompanied her to help carry laundry or wipe the cars in the driveway. To Montgomery, they were nothing more than background noise in his empire of glass and gold. But that was about to change. It started one Friday afternoon, when Montgomery decided to host another one of his infamous parties. Gatherings for CEOs, investors, and politicians where power was the main course and ego the dessert. Reporters would call them legendary, but the servants called them circuses. On that day, as caterers rushed in and the scent of truffle oil filled the halls, Montgomery strolled through the living room with a drink in hand, boasting about his latest acquisition, a custom-built biometric safe worth more than some people's entire lives. "It's uncrackable," he bragged, his voice booming across the marble hall. Top-of-the-line tech. Retinal scanner, pressure sensors, voice lock, quantum-encrypted algorithm. No one on Earth could open it without me. His guests laughed, some clapping, others toasting his genius. "You could hide the crown jewels in there," one man said. Montgomery smirked. "I could hide the world," he replied. Then with a wicked grin he added, "In fact, I'll make a deal with anyone here, or anyone alive. If you can open that safe, I'll give you $200 million on the spot." The room erupted with laughter. Some thought he was joking. Others took videos for social media. His words trended online within minutes. #Billionaire challenge. Open my safe and $200 million is yours. That night, Elena watched from the corner of the room as the guests laughed, glasses clinking, their laughter echoing like thunder. She had seen this side of him before, the arrogance, the hunger to humiliate. To him, money wasn't just power. It was entertainment. When the last guest left, she quietly cleaned the room, picking up empty glasses and wiping spilled champagne off the floor. Her son Liam waited outside in the rain, under the glow of a flickering streetlight. He was 16, tall for his age, with curious gray eyes and a quiet intelligence that often made teachers pause mid-sentence. He loved puzzles, codes, and computers, not the games most boys his age played, but the kind of deep logic that made machines obey human thought. When Elena finally joined him outside, drenched and exhausted, she mentioned the billionaire's boast, almost jokingly, trying to lighten the air. "He said anyone who opens his safe gets $200 million, she laughed softly, shaking her head. But Liam didn't laugh. His expression turned thoughtful, eyes narrowing as though something invisible had just clicked into place. "What kind of safe?" he asked quietly. She shrugged, not realizing the question mattered. "One of those fancy electronic ones, I think." He said it's impossible to open. Liam's lips curved slightly, not in arrogance, but in curiosity. "Nothing's impossible," he murmured. That night, while the mansion slept under the heavy rain, a light glowed faintly from the servants' quarters, the reflection of a boy's mind racing faster than lightning. What no one knew, not even his mother, was that Liam had a secret, a gift he'd been hiding since childhood. And by the time the sun rose over Montgomery's empire, that gift would challenge everything the billionaire thought he knew about power, genius, and humility. Sleep did not come easily to Liam that night. The rain had softened into a mist outside the cracked window, and through it, he could see the faint outline of the Montgomery mansion glowing in the distance like a fortress of gold. His mind buzzed with questions, not about the money, but about the challenge. What kind of safe could a man like that own? What security systems would he trust? For most people, it was just a boast at a party, a drunken flex of power. But to Liam, it was a puzzle, a code wrapped in arrogance, begging to be solved. Ever since he was a child, locks and patterns fascinated him. He could dismantle a clock and rebuild it in half the time. By 12, he was writing his own software, experimenting with encryption algorithms he barely understood at first. To him, every lock was a conversation, a secret waiting to be understood. Liam lay awake for hours, replaying every word his mother had said about the party. Biometric safe. Voice locked. Quantum encrypted algorithm. He whispered the words like clues in a riddle. Biometric meant it was tied to a physical identity. A fingerprint, an iris, maybe a vocal pattern. Voice lock could be fooled by tone mimicry, depending on the system. Quantum encryption, that was trickier, but it didn't scare him. He had read about it in online security forums. Even tested theoretical bypass models using open-source simulators. But this wasn't about textbooks or software anymore. This was about a billionaire who believed the world revolved around him, mocking everyone below him. And somewhere deep in Liam's heart, a quiet anger began to form. He thought about his mother, the way she scrubbed marble floors until her hands cracked, how she bowed her head when Montgomery passed, invisible in her own labor. He thought of the countless times she came home with aching feet, pretending everything was fine. The $200 million meant nothing to Montgomery. A joke, a taunt. But for his mother, that money could mean freedom. A life where she didn't have to serve the very people who laughed at her. Liam's jaw tightened. Open my safe and $200 million is yours. The words echoed in his head like a dare meant for him alone. By dawn, Liam had made up his mind. He wasn't thinking about the money or fame. He wanted to prove something, not to Montgomery, but to himself. He packed his old laptop, a few tools, and a small device he'd built from spare parts. A handheld circuit reader that could detect electrical patterns through metal. He'd made it for fun, a project he never told his teachers about. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. As the sun rose, casting pale light through the fog, he found his mother in the kitchen preparing breakfast for the household staff. "Mom," he said, his tone calm but determined. "I want to see the safe." Elena looked up, startled. "What do you mean? Mr. Montgomery's safe?" "Liam, that's not something we even go near." But the look in his eyes stopped her. It wasn't childish mischief. It was something deeper, sharper. "I just want to see it," he said. "I won't touch anything. I promise." She hesitated, torn between fear and trust. Finally she sighed. "All right. But only when he's out for the afternoon meeting." "And Liam, promise me you won't do anything foolish." When the clock struck 3, the mansion was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning and the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Montgomery had left with his chauffeur, leaving behind a house that gleamed but felt empty. Elena guided Liam through the silent corridors until they reached the study. A vast room filled with books, oil paintings, and a heavy oak desk that looked like it belonged in a royal palace. On the far wall, hidden behind a portrait of Montgomery himself, was the safe. It was sleek, black, and seamless, no visible keyhole, just a digital panel glowing faintly blue. Liam stepped closer, his reflection rippling across the polished metal. His heart raced, not from fear, but exhilaration. He placed his hand an inch above the surface, feeling the faint warmth of internal circuitry. "It's beautiful," he whispered. His mother frowned nervously. "Liam, let's go. You've seen it now." But he didn't move. His eyes scanned the interface, 3 sections: retinal scanner, vocal pad, digital keypad. No brand name visible. Custom-built. Likely proprietary. He could tell instantly, this wasn't something money bought. It was something built by someone who understood fear. For a moment, Liam simply stood there, analyzing every curve, every reflection, memorizing the rhythm of the light pulses. And then, quietly, almost as if the mansion itself could hear him, he smiled. 60 seconds, he murmured under his breath. "That's all it'll take." His mother turned sharply. "What did you say?" But he only smiled wider, stepping back from the safe. "Nothing, Mom. Just thinking." She didn't know it then, but in that instant, in that quiet stare between a boy and an unbreakable vault, the countdown had already begun. That night, the mansion once again fell silent, the kind of silence that felt almost alive, humming softly beneath the walls. The guests were gone, the laughter faded, and even the servants had retreated to their quarters. Only the rain outside remained constant, whispering against the glass like a secret trying to be heard. In the dim light of his small room above the servants' quarters, Liam sat cross-legged on the floor, his laptop open before him. Lines of code flickered across the screen, green and white symbols dancing in rhythm to the quiet ticking of the clock. He wasn't hacking. Not yet. He was learning. Observing. Decoding every possible layer of logic that could protect a system like Montgomery's. Liam's mind moved faster than his fingers. He had no blueprints, no access codes, no inside information. All he had was what he saw earlier. The safe's interface, the rhythm of its lights, the way the system pulsed when he hovered his hand near it. Those were clues. Most people wouldn't have noticed them, but Liam saw patterns where others saw chaos. He replayed the image in his head, recalling the blue glow, the faint hum behind the steel casing. The system was alive, he realized, adaptive. It wasn't a standard biometric lock. It was something deeper, something reactive. Voice, retina, code, he whispered, jotting the sequence on a scrap of paper. But maybe not in that order. Hours passed. His fingers moved restlessly over the keys, sketching out simulations. Mock security algorithms designed to test response patterns. Each time he broke one, he built another, stronger. It wasn't arrogance. It was discipline. Liam didn't want to rush. He wanted to understand how the machine thought, or rather, how the billionaire who owned it thought. Montgomery didn't trust people, only systems. He believed that perfection could be bought, coded, controlled. But Liam knew something he didn't. No code was truly perfect, because every creator left a piece of themselves in their design. And where there were humans, there were flaws. He remembered something his late father used to say before he passed. A mechanic who fixed broken radios and watches for a living. Everything built by man can be rebuilt by another, he'd tell Liam, letting him play with the gears and springs on the workbench. And the one who listens closest, he's the one who'll understand it best. Those words came back to him now, as he stared at the screen. Listening, that was the key. The safe wasn't just a machine. It was listening. To voice. To rhythm. To sequence. That's why Montgomery's voice lock was the centerpiece, his pride. So Liam started there. Using his laptop's mic, he began recording small samples of sound frequencies, pitches that matched the kind of tones digital locks responded to. He tested mimicry patterns, trying to simulate what the billionaire's voice might sound like from memory. He'd heard Montgomery's voice 100 times in passing. Deep, arrogant, clipped at the ends of sentences. Liam played with modulation tools, layering resonance filters until the sound that came from his speaker almost startled him. It wasn't perfect, but close enough to make his skin prickle. Next, he opened a program of his own creation. EchoMap, something he'd coded 2 years ago for fun. It used sound waves to create three-dimensional models of any object based on reflected frequencies. He calibrated the settings to what he remembered of the safe. The size, the depth of its casing, the distance between the retina scanner and the voice pad. Slowly, a crude wireframe appeared on the screen. An approximation, yes, but enough to start mapping internal logic. Each pulse revealed micro-delays in circuitry. Milliseconds that told Liam how the encryption sequenced itself. Got you, he whispered, leaning closer. It was past midnight when he realized he wasn't alone. The door creaked softly. His mother stood there, pale in the faint glow of the laptop. Liam, she said softly, voice trembling. You haven't slept at all. What are you doing? He minimized the screen instinctively. Nothing, Mom. Just studying. She frowned, stepping closer. Please don't get yourself in trouble. These people, they don't forgive mistakes. You understand. Liam nodded, forcing a smile. I know, Mom. I promise I won't do anything stupid. But as soon as she left, he reopened the screen. His pulse quickened. He wasn't doing this out of rebellion. He was doing it because it mattered. Because somewhere in that safe behind that steel and code was more than money. It was a symbol of power that mocked people like his mother. And if he could crack it, even for a moment, he could prove that brilliance wasn't born from wealth. It was born from hunger. By the time the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, Liam's eyes were red but shining. His simulations were complete. His mimicry code was stable. His plan was set. Tomorrow he would test everything. Not on the real safe, not yet, but on a replica he would build himself using scrap metal, old sensors and faith. He looked out the window one last time, at the mansion's faint outline in the fog. "You think no one can touch you," he murmured. "Let's see about that." By morning, the mansion was alive again. Servants rushing through corridors, the clatter of breakfast trays, the low hum of luxury cars pulling into the driveway. To everyone else, it was an ordinary Saturday in the Montgomery estate. But for Liam, it was the beginning of something far from ordinary. His mother went about her duties as usual, polishing mirrors and setting out fresh towels, while he slipped quietly into the old storage room near the east wing, a place no one visited anymore. Dust hung in the sunlight like fog, and the air smelled of oil and forgotten years. Broken machines, discarded gadgets, and spare tools lay scattered across the shelves, a treasure chest to a mind like his. He rolled up his sleeves, scanning the room like a battlefield. "All right," he whispered to himself. "Let's build you." Using bits of wire, metal panels, and old biometric sensors from Montgomery's outdated security systems, Liam began constructing his version of the Billionaire safe. Not perfect, but close enough to test his theories. He didn't need the exact machine. He needed to understand the mindset behind it. Every wire he soldered, every circuit he linked, was a line of conversation between him and Montgomery's arrogance. The old man believed no one could match his intellect, and that belief would be his downfall. 4 hours, Liam worked tirelessly, the whir of tools blending with the rhythm of his breathing. Sweat streaked his forehead, his fingers blackened from metal dust. By noon, the mock safe stood before him, a crude box of metal with a voice pad, a light scanner, and a keypad wired into his laptop. Primitive, yes, but responsive. He hooked up his EchoMap software, aligning sensors to replicate the same reaction timing he'd observed from the real safe. "Let's see what you're hiding," he murmured, typing a command sequence. The screen came alive with data, response curves, delay timings, and encryption layers. At first, the results were inconsistent. The voice pad refused to recognize his modulated tone. The scanner glitched, the system locked itself every few attempts. But Liam didn't get frustrated. He adjusted. Every failure gave him another piece of the puzzle. He altered the pitch of his voice synthesis, changed light reflection parameters, rewired the delay timing by microseconds. Slowly, the digital pattern began to stabilize. The simulated system responded. Slower at first, then smoother. "That's it," Liam whispered, eyes gleaming. "You're listening now." The hours slipped away unnoticed. He barely ate, barely moved. The afternoon light faded into amber dusk, and the mansion's noise quieted as guests began to leave. Somewhere upstairs, Montgomery laughed into his phone, bragging to a friend about how even NASA engineers had once tried to outsmart his designs and failed. The sound of that laughter echoed faintly through the walls, and something in Liam's chest tightened. He thought of his mother again, her tired eyes, her silent obedience. She was too proud to complain, but he could feel her exhaustion in the air she carried home every night. All of this was for her. By evening, his mock safe was complete. It now mirrored the same challenge structure: a voice recognition gate, a retina scan simulation, and a numeric encryption that regenerated every 60 seconds. He stared at the screen, watching the code shift like living light. "So that's your trick," he murmured. "A rotating cipher tied to biometric verification. You think randomness can't be mapped." But Liam had already anticipated that. He wrote a new algorithm, one that tracked pattern behavior, searching for repetition in what looked like chaos. All encryption, he knew, relied on rhythm. It might take 1 billion years for a machine to guess the right combination, but a human mind with intuition could sometimes see the answer instantly. He ran the program again. Lines of code flickered, rejection, 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 until suddenly, the screen flashed access granted in glowing blue text. Liam froze. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. The mock safe's latch clicked open with a faint metallic sigh. He'd done it, not the real thing yet, but close enough to prove that his theory worked. 60 seconds, he whispered, almost laughing. "That's all it takes." He leaned back against the wall, breath trembling between exhaustion and exhilaration. Outside, thunder rolled again, and lightning illuminated the massive mansion's silhouette. Liam stared at the glow through the window, the place that symbolized everything his family never had. He thought about what it meant to defy someone like Montgomery, not just in intellect but in pride.